I believe not that many talk about how hard it is for us professional athletes who were most of their lives into a professional sports and now are trying to get into real world and build a career and just simply exist without spending 20 plus hours a week practicing in a sport we actually loved and had big goals in, right? This topic is pretty familiar to me since I'm now as much as 3 years out of college sports, where I myself was on Division 1 swim team and was doing swimming as long as I remember it since I was a kid. So most of my free time and warm memories are around this sport, where I met my lifelong friends and traveled around the world just because I used to spend so much time in the thing that I loved, right? Well, as you probably know, it wasn't supposed to be like that forever. And depending on the sport you are in and many other things, of course, your professional athletics career will end up earlier or sooner, regardless of how good you are. And we are not talking today about the top 1% of super gifted and talented athletes who can make ton of money out of their sports career, since they fall into completely different life perspective, I would say. I will talk more about us, regular athletes who still made big moves into sports and had great achievements, but it wasn't enough to make a living out of it. And if you're in sports, you know there is different tiers of being a professional athlete, where there is a huge gap between Division 3 and Division 1 performance in college, or being a D1 athlete and NCAA finalist, or being NCAA finalist and Olympic champion, right? Where it is like everywhere. Only 1% makes it to the top and can make a living out of it, but we, the rest who still spend same amount of time and effort to be where we are and fulfill our dreams together with hopes, we are in different situationship when we get to a graduating a college or not being able to continue sports simply because of lack of budget or other reasons. And so the scary part comes to everyone, where the question comes, what's next? Like, you finally start recognize that, okay, I have to get into real world and I have no fucking clue what to do. Yes, I might have a degree and have some knowledge here and there, but you identified yourself all your life as an athlete and everyone else around you did so too. And so we slowly get into this so-called identity crisis. And before we go further, let me talk about my recent story of last couple of years, where, as you might already know from my previous videos, where I graduated D1 college and I was a student athlete, and I myself can tell that it was pretty big life turnover, especially in first year after I graduated and stopped sports, where now the majority of the time was taken by my corporate job. And to say the least, it took me some time to adjust to the new reality, since I never felt so much identity pressure, maybe not from people around me, but rather from myself inside of me, where I just couldn't accept that how far I got with sports, and now I'm just a regular office clerk sitting at the desk and having a pizza as my employer benefit on lunchtime. This shit was insane, bro. Like, the reality checkup I had to go through was kind of nuts. And I have heard others saying, well, it's just your ego being too high and now it gets to the place it should be. Well, this is just my opinion, but if you say it like that, you probably never been deep into sports or were a professional athlete, since only we who spend all our free time and effort to compete at the top level in any kind of sport knows how mentally and physically tough you have to be able to compete in such high competitive environment, where if you have weak mindset and low self-esteem, any kind of sport, when stakes will get higher, like, bro, it will crush you instantly. And even if you have somewhat successful career, there will be anyways a constant losses which you will have to go through, and without high ego and self-worth, you don't even stand a chance to survive in such an environment. So my argument against this is that it's not us athletes who have high ego, it's environment which made us like that. And so stepping down from such an environment is kind of tough, dude, because we are used to being in perfect shape, compete against the best athletes around the world, have attention from people around, and simply have big goals for the future, right? Where once you step out of it and see how it is on the other side of the screen, I don't know, dude, like it hits you pretty bad, like bad, which is the reason many athletes just can't handle it, because the pressure is so constant, and depending on the context, like how successful your career was, or I don't know, did you have a backup plan, or do you have friends that have kind of similar transition period which you can share your thoughts with? It all will come down to how good you will go through this weird life transition from being an athlete to a just having a regular human lifestyle, right? But like it usually is in real life, it's really not that simple task to do, which is reason why many athletes struggle during this time period, and some even develop addiction to a different substances. We all know which ones, right? And even top athletes, by the way, there is a reason after they finish their career, they struggle in real life, because all they knew was the sport they did for majority of their lifetime and identified themselves as the top athletes, right? I don't know if you heard this story, but there was a famous example how being on top of the world can crush your identity once it's over. What I'm talking about is, of course, Michael Phelps, where after he won 8 gold medals at the Beijing 2008 Olympics, which was something out of mind and literally thought impossible to do in a single meet, where he proved everyone wrong and simply try to think what can be greater than winning 8 gold medals at a single Olympics, right? Where top of the athletes are competing at their best shape. It's pretty hard to find something even close to such greatness. And so, like he mentioned himself, after these games, he found himself in the lowest point of his life, where he couldn't even push him out of bed because there was no reason in his head at the time, since he literally achieved what he was practicing for all his life, and nobody else did something like that. So nobody even could imagine what's happening in his head, since he was the only guy who experienced such a, I don't know, great moment, right? And so later he somehow got out of this stage, but then another Olympics came in and he experienced same thing again, over and over again. This is, of course, kind of extreme example, but same thing happens with top athletes and us regular athletes. Maybe not such an extreme example, but still the feelings of being lost and confused are still there. And it is really hard to accept. Now the question is how to deal with it, or how to make this transition somewhat less disturbing and easy to go through, right? Well, I can't tell you I had perfect way myself. Like I had pretty rough journey, to be honest, but maybe some things I figured will help you too. So the first one is you have to find something, whether it's a hobby or your main job, that you are willing to do at least as much as you did your sport. And it would be even more better if you also like it same way as you did your sport. So basically the thing is, since you know how hard and much effort you need to do in one specific direction to achieve something, like just trust me on this one, nothing else will work for you until you start invest same amount of energy and time in something different. And here's a problem, at least that was for me, where I was expecting that I will like my corporate office job and will have no problems in investing my effort and time in there, because that's what I assumed I would do after graduating college and athletics together with it. And as some of you already know, that wasn't a case at all. I was so wrong. So here is the catch, at least that's what I figured out for myself. If you don't find such thing, like I said, if it's either a job or something else that you will be willing to spend as much time into it as you did in your sport, you're gonna struggle, bro, and procrastinate simply because your brain is already wired that way, where if you can't see again so much potential and joy with opportunities and build your ego again, you're not gonna invest time in that direction. Trust me. Like perfect scenario, at least how it was for me, was to find a job that would meet this criteria and also allow me make money to build my first capital, right? Since I wasn't in the best financial spot, right? So in my case, I had to find my new direction through a job, which wasn't that easy since, like I said, I had to quit my traditional path to success and find something else, which was a reason why my transition was a little bit rough. But it might not be the case at all for you. If you land the job that you like and enjoy immediately after the graduation or athletics, you will do fine, trust me. So it all depends on one thing: how quick you can substitute your typical athletics routine with a job or anything else. Like I said, for me it was a job. But for you, if the money isn't the main thing at the moment, the direction might be through something else, like doing some hobby. Maybe you find yourself enjoying cooking food, right? And you see that you can cook every day and spend time learning new foods, and maybe grow a food channel and teach other people how to cook. Maybe you don't have to look out for new hobby. Maybe you can coach or figure out any business product for the athletes in the same sport you were in which you have so much experience and you know all the issues athletes face there, and so maybe you can make business out of it, right? Which also is a direction that will require the same or maybe even more effort than before, but which can theoretically make you a ton of money simply because you have bigger knowledge than others, and which will also give you a life's purpose and might be even more important, right? So it all depends on the context, I would say. But yeah, it's not an easy transition. I hope it all makes sense, and if it did, let me know, guys. Peace.